Have you ever woken up at 3 in the morning and thought, how much time do I actually have left? If you're over 50, that question isn't morbid, it's honest. And it's urgent. Most people try to push that thought away. They distract themselves, stay busy, pretend they have forever. But Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, an emperor who commanded legions, did the opposite. Every single day, he reminded himself that he was going to die. And that practice didn't make him depressed or paralyzed. It made him free. Today, we're diving into what Marcus Aurelius discovered about living fully when you truly accept your mortality. This isn't about fear or resignation. It's about clarity. It's about legacy and purpose that actually matter. And it's about a 2,000-year-old practice called Memento Mori that can transform how you spend every day you have left. In the next 29 minutes, you're going to learn exactly how Marcus Aurelius used death awareness as a tool for living better, not hiding from life. You'll get his framework for what makes a life well lived. And you'll walk away with practical exercises you can use today to cut through the noise and focus on what actually matters at this stage of your life. If that sounds like something you need right now, hit that like button to help this message reach more people who are asking the same question you are. Let's begin. So who is Marcus Aurelius, and why should you care what he thought about death and living fully after 50? Here's the thing. This wasn't some ivory tower philosopher theorizing about life from a distance. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome at its peak, the most powerful political and military leader on the planet. He commanded armies. He made life and death decisions daily. He dealt with plagues, wars, betrayals, and the weight of an empire on his shoulders. And yet, in the middle of all that chaos and power, he sat down almost every night and wrote in his journal. Not for publication, not for history, just for himself. Those writings became what we now call meditations, a private conversation between Marcus and his own soul about how to live well, how to face death with courage, and how to build a legacy worth leaving. He was writing to remind himself, over and over, that even emperors die. That power is temporary. That the only thing that lasts is the quality of your character and how you treated people along the way. Think about that for a second. The man who had everything the world could offer, wealth, fame, armies, palaces, spent his evenings reminding himself that none of it would last. That's not pessimism. That's radical clarity. And here's why his words matter so much for us today, especially if you're over 50 and feeling that urgency to make your life count. Marcus lived in a completely different world, but he faced the exact same existential questions you're facing right now. What matters? What lasts? How do I live so that when my time comes, I can say I lived well? The beauty of Stoicism for 50 plus is that it doesn't sugarcoat reality. Marcus didn't pretend death wasn't coming. He didn't chase fountain of youth fantasies. He looked mortality straight in the face every single day and asked, given that I'm going to die, how should I live today? And that question, that simple, brutal, honest question, changed everything. Which brings us to the practice that defined his entire philosophy. Memento Mori. It's Latin for remember you must die. And if you're hearing that phrase for the first time, or even if you've heard it before, let me clear something up right away. This is not about being morbid. It's not about walking around depressed, thinking gloomy thoughts about death. That's the modern distortion of a practice that was actually designed to do the exact opposite, to make you more alive, more present, more focused on what truly matters. The Stoics, and Marcus Aurelius in particular, used Memento Mori as a daily mental practice to cut through all the trivial garbage that clutters our minds. Think about how you spend most of your mental energy, worrying about what people think, obsessing over things you can't control, chasing status symbols that won't matter in 5 years, let alone 50, getting irritated by traffic or a rude comment or 100 other petty annoyances. Marcus used death awareness to ask himself, will this matter when I'm dying? Well, I wish I'd spend my energy on this. Here's the distinction that changes everything. Modern culture treats death as the enemy, something to deny and avoid at all costs. We hide it away. We don't talk about it. We act like if we just don't think about death, somehow it won't come for us. But the Stoics saw death as a counselor, a teacher, a source of wisdom. They believed that facing mortality honestly was the only way to live fully. Because when you truly accept that your time is limited, not in some abstract someday sense, but viscerally, deeply, your priorities snap into focus instantly. Imagine you got a diagnosis today that you had 1 year to live. What would you stop doing immediately? What petty grudges would you drop? What relationships would you repair? What dreams would you finally pursue? That clarity, that radical shift in priorities, that's what Memento Mori gives you. Except you don't need a diagnosis to access it. You just need the courage to acknowledge what's already true. You are going to die, and you don't know when. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not to scare you into paralysis, but to wake you up to the preciousness of the time you have." And here's the beautiful paradox. The more honestly you face death, the more fully you live. Which is exactly what happens when you let death awareness clarify what actually matters in your life. So what does that clarity actually look like in practice? Let me give you the brutal truth. Most of what you worry about doesn't matter. Most of the stuff you fill your days with is noise. And the reason you don't see that clearly is because you're living as if you have infinite time. You're postponing the important stuff. Meaningful conversations, creative projects, healing old wounds, building real connection, because you tell yourself you'll get to it eventually. Later. Someday. When things calm down. But here's what Marcus Aurelius understood at a bone-deep level. Things never calm down. There is no later. There's only now. And when you remind yourself daily that your time is finite and uncertain, suddenly the fog lifts. You see with startling clarity what deserves your energy and what doesn't. That argument with your sibling that's been going on for 3 years. Either fix it today or let it go. That dream you keep talking about but never start. Start it now or admit you're never going to do it. That person who drains your energy and gives nothing back. Stop spending time with them. Marcus himself cut ruthlessly through the obligations and expectations that didn't serve his values. He was an emperor. People wanted things from him constantly. Political favors, attention, validation. And he learned to say no to almost all of it. Not because he was cold or selfish, but because he knew his time was limited and he had to spend it on what actually mattered. Governing justly, treating people with dignity, developing his character, being present for the people he loved. Here's a practical exercise you can do right now. Something Marcus would have recognized immediately. Ask yourself, if today were my last day, what would I regret not doing? What I wish I'd said? What I wish I'd fixed? Write down 3 things. Don't overthink it. Just 3 things. And then ask yourself the follow-up question that changes everything. So why am I waiting? You're not guaranteed tomorrow. You're not even guaranteed this evening. The only moment you have is right now. That's the power of Memento Mori for living fully after 50. It strips away the illusion that you can keep postponing what matters. It forces you to confront the gap between how you're living and how you want to live. And here's the thing. Clarity without action is just another form of distraction. Which is why Marcus didn't just think about these things. He built his entire life around a specific set of values that turned death awareness into daily practice. Marcus Aurelius didn't just meditate on death and hope that somehow made him a better person. He had a blueprint, a framework for what made a life well lived. The Stoics boiled it down to 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. And these weren't abstract philosophical concepts to Marcus. They were the daily checklist he used to evaluate whether he was actually living according to his values or just talking about them. Let's break these down because they're the foundation of real legacy and purpose, especially after 50. First, wisdom. For the Stoics, wisdom wasn't about how much you knew or how smart you were. It was about seeing things clearly, understanding what you can control and what you can't, and making good decisions based on reality rather than wishful thinking or ego. Marcus constantly reminded himself to see situations as they actually were, not as he wanted them to be. At 50 plus, that kind of wisdom is gold. You've lived long enough to have seen patterns. You know what works and what doesn't. The question is, are you acting on that wisdom, or are you still making the same mistakes you made at 30? Second, justice. And this isn't legal justice. It's about treating people fairly, contributing to your community, recognizing that we're all connected. Marcus believed your legacy wasn't about monuments or achievements. It was about how you treated the people around you, especially the ones who couldn't do anything for you in return. Did you act with integrity? Did you help where you could? Did you leave people better than you found them? That's the legacy that actually lasts. Third, courage. Not battlefield courage, though Marcus knew plenty about that. The courage to face hard truths. The courage to have difficult conversations. The courage to change course when you realize you're on the wrong path, even if you've invested years in that path. The courage to be vulnerable, to admit when you're wrong, to ask for help. At this stage of life, that kind of courage matters more than any physical bravery because it determines whether you're going to live authentically or keep playing roles that don't fit anymore. And fourth, temperance, balance, self-control, not in a puritanical, deny yourself everything sense, but in a don't let your appetites and impulses run your life sense. Marcus had access to every luxury and indulgence the Roman Empire could provide. He could have lived like a hedonist emperor, but he practiced restraint because he knew that chasing pleasure constantly is a trap. It doesn't lead to fulfillment. It leads to emptiness. At 50 plus, you probably learned that lesson the hard way already. The question is whether you're still falling for it. Here's what's brilliant about these 4 virtues as a framework for making life count. They give you a simple daily test. Did I act with wisdom today? Did I treat people justly? Did I have courage when it mattered? Did I practice temperance? Or did I let my impulses control me? Marcus didn't need to build monuments or conquer more territory to feel like his life mattered. He just needed to live these virtues consistently. And that's something you can do today, right now, regardless of your circumstances. But knowing the virtues is one thing. Actually practicing them daily requires method. So how did Marcus Aurelius actually practice Memento Mori and these virtues on a daily basis? Because philosophy without practice is just intellectual entertainment, right? It's the difference between reading about fitness and actually going to the gym. Marcus had specific exercises, routines he did every single day to keep himself grounded in reality and focused on living fully. Here's one of his core practices, something he did every morning. He'd spend a few minutes visualizing his own death, not in a morbid way, but in a clear, honest way. He'd remind himself that today might be his last day, that he could leave life right now. And then he'd ask, given that truth, how do I want to show up today? What kind of person do I want to be in the hours I have? That mental reset every morning changed everything. It made it impossible to waste time on trivial drama. It made every interaction more intentional. It gave him clarity about what deserved his energy. You could do this exact practice. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone or dive into your routine, sit quietly for 3 minutes. Visualize, as clearly as you can, that this might be your last day. Don't shy away from it. Really sit with the reality that today could be it. And then ask yourself Marcus's question, what kind of person do I want to be today? What really matters? You'll be amazed at how quickly the noise falls away. Suddenly you're not worried about that email that annoyed you yesterday. You're thinking about calling your daughter, about finishing that project that's been nagging at you, about being present instead of distracted. Marcus also had an evening practice. Every night, he'd review his day and ask himself hard questions. Did I live according to my values today? Where did I fall short? What could I have done better? This wasn't about beating himself up. It was about honest self-assessment, so he could improve tomorrow. He wrote in his meditations, when you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. And then at night, he'd evaluate whether he'd actually treated that privilege with the respect it deserved. Here's a simple evening practice for you. Before you go to sleep, ask yourself 3 questions. First, did I live well today? Be honest. Second, what's one thing I could have done better? Just one. And third, what am I grateful for right now? That last question is crucial because Stoicism isn't about being grim or joyless. It's about appreciating what you have while you have it, because you know it's temporary. Marcus wrote about being grateful for the people in his life, for his health, for another day of consciousness. Even in the middle of war and plague and political chaos, he found things to be grateful for. The beautiful thing about these practices is they're simple. You don't need special equipment or hours of time. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night. But those 10 minutes can fundamentally change how you live the other 23 hours and 50 minutes. They keep you focused on what matters. They prevent you from sleepwalking through your days. They turn death awareness into life awareness. But here's the question that's probably nagging at you. What about legacy? What about leaving something behind that lasts? And that's where things get really interesting. Let's talk about legacy and purpose, because this is where a lot of people over 50 get it completely wrong. There's this panic that sets in, this voice that says, I'm running out of time. I need to do something big, something that will be remembered, something that proves my life mattered. And so people start chasing performative legacy, writing a book nobody reads, starting a business that doesn't solve a real problem, creating some grand project that's really just about ego and fear of being forgotten. Marcus Aurelius had some brutal clarity on this topic. He wrote, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. Read that again. Your legacy isn't about what other people remember or how impressive your accomplishments look from the outside. It's about your character, your actions, your impact on the people whose lives you touch directly. Here's what Marcus understood that most people miss. The monuments crumble. The achievements get forgotten. The fame fades. He was literally the emperor of Rome, and he knew that even his name would eventually fade into obscurity. And it did for over 1,000 years. His statues were destroyed. His palaces fell to ruin. His political accomplishments were rewritten or forgotten. What survived? His character, his words, the example he set for how to live with integrity and face mortality with courage. That's the only thing that actually lasted. So what does this mean for you? It means the question isn't, what big thing can I do before I die to prove my life mattered? The question is, am I living with integrity right now? Am I treating people well? Am I being the kind of person I'd be proud to be remembered as? Your real legacy isn't the awards or the money or the stuff you accumulate. It's the influence you have on the people around you, the values you pass on, the example you set, the kindness you show when nobody's watching, the courage you demonstrate when things are hard. Marcus wrote about this constantly because he saw how easy it was to get distracted by the pursuit of fame and external validation. He reminded himself that in 100 years, everyone who knew him would be dead. In 200 years, no one would remember his face. In 1,000 years, the entire Roman Empire might be gone. And he was right about all of it. But here's the paradox. By letting go of the need for external legacy, by focusing purely on living virtuously and treating people well, he created a legacy that's lasted 2,000 years. Not because he tried to, but because real character always leaves a mark. There's enormous freedom in accepting this truth. You don't have to write the great American novel. You don't have to build a business empire. You don't have to do anything objectively impressive for your life to matter. You just have to live well, treat people with dignity, act with courage and wisdom and justice and temperance, and influence the people in your immediate circle positively. That's it. That's the whole game, which changes everything about the urgency you might be feeling right now. So here's where we get personal. Because if you're over 50 and you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're dealing with some version of this thought. I wasted so much time. I should have figured this out sooner. I should have started earlier. Now I'm running out of time to do the things that matter. And that thought, that regret mixed with urgency, can either paralyze you or drive you into frantic, misguided action. So what would Marcus Aurelius say to you right now about your time left? First, He'd tell you to stop romanticizing the past and regretting time you can't get back. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, not because the past doesn't matter, but because you can't do anything about it. The only moment you can actually act in is this one, right now. The time you wasted is gone. The opportunities you missed are gone. The younger version of yourself with more energy and fewer obligations is gone. All you have is this moment and the moments that follow." So the question isn't, why didn't I start sooner? The question is, what am I going to do with the time I have left? Second, Marcus would tell you that quantity of time matters far less than quality. He didn't live a particularly long life by our standards. He died at 58. But he lived more fully, more consciously, more virtuously in his 58 years than most people live in 90. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Think about that. You're not dead yet. You're not even close. You might have 20, 30, even 40 years left. The question is, are you actually living those years, or are you just going through the motions? Here's one of my favorite passages from Marcus's Meditations. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. That's not depressing. That's liberating. He's saying, forget about your past regrets and your future anxieties. You've been given a gift, this present moment, and however many moments follow. Don't squander them by wallowing in what might have been or worrying about how much time you have left. Just live well right now. And third, Marcus would tell you that it's never too late to become who you're capable of being. He didn't start writing his meditations until he was in his 50s, in the middle of brutal military campaigns and political crises. He could have said, "I'm too old, too busy, too tired to do deep philosophical work." But he didn't. He used the time he had. He became wiser, more reflective, more intentional about his life in his 50s than he'd been in his 20s or 30s. Age gave him perspective, experience gave him wisdom, and the awareness of his mortality gave him urgency. You have that same opportunity. Right now, today, this moment. You could decide that everything before now was prologue and that the real story, the one that matters, starts now. You can decide to live with intention, courage, wisdom, and integrity from this point forward. You don't need decades. You don't even need years. You just need to start. Which brings us to the final question. How do you know if you're living well? How do you measure a life well lived? So here's the framework Marcus Aurelius used to evaluate his own life. The test he applied daily to know whether he was living according to his values or just sleepwalking through existence. And this is something you can use right now, today, to assess where you are and where you need to course correct. It's simple, but it's not easy, because it requires radical honesty. First question Marcus asked himself constantly, am I acting according to nature? And by nature, he meant human nature at its best, rational, social, capable of virtue. He was asking, am I living up to my potential as a human being, or am I living like an animal driven purely by appetites and impulses? For you, that translates to, am I making conscious, intentional choices, or am I just reacting? Am I developing my character, or am I coasting? Am I using my rationality and wisdom, or am I letting fear and desire control me? Second question, am I treating people justly and with kindness? Marcus was obsessed with this. He wrote about it over and over in his private journals. He knew that your life is ultimately measured by how you treated the people around you. So ask yourself, am I acting with integrity in my relationships? Am I showing up for the people I love? Am I treating strangers with basic human dignity? Or am I so wrapped up in my own problems that I've become indifferent or even cruel to others? That's a hard question, but it's an essential one. Third question, am I facing difficulties with courage, or am I avoiding them? Because life after 50 comes with challenges, health issues, loss, transitions, uncertainty. Marcus believed that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was facing what needs to be faced anyway. So ask yourself, what am I avoiding right now because it's hard or scary? What conversation do I need to have that I keep putting off? What truth do I need to face that I've been denying? Your character is built in those moments of difficulty, not in the easy times. Fourth question, am I practicing temperance, or am I letting my appetites control me? This isn't about being a monk. Marcus enjoyed food and wine and physical pleasure, but he didn't let those things dominate his life or cloud his judgment. He maintained balance. So ask yourself, what am I overindulging in as a form of escape? Where am I out of balance? What habits are serving me? And what habits are I'm just clinging to out of fear or boredom? And here's the final, most important question Marcus asked himself. If I died tonight, would I be proud of how I lived today? Not proud in an arrogant way, but at peace. Would you feel like you lived with integrity? Would you feel like you showed up as the person you want to be? Or would you have regrets about how you spend your time and energy? That's the daily test of a life well lived. Here's what's beautiful about this framework. It's not about grand achievements or impressive accomplishments. It's about daily character. It's about showing up consistently as your best self, treating people well, acting with courage and wisdom, and living in alignment with your values. Do that, and legacy and purpose take care of themselves. Do that, and you're living fully, regardless of how much time you have left. Do that, and death loses its power to terrify you because you know you're living the right way. Marcus Aurelius used Memento Mori, the awareness that death is coming, not as a source of fear, but as a source of clarity and motivation. And that's what I want you to take away from this. Death isn't the enemy. Wasted life is the enemy. Living unconsciously on autopilot, driven by fear and ego and distraction, that's the tragedy. But you're aware now. You're asking the right questions. And that means you can change course starting right now. So here's where we are. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, spent his life reminding himself that he was going to die. And that practice, that daily awareness of mortality, didn't make him miserable. It made him free. It gave him clarity about what mattered. It helped him cut through all the noise in politics and ego and focus on living virtuously, treating people well, and building real character instead of chasing empty fame. The question isn't whether you're going to die. You are. The question is how you're going to live with the time you have left. Are you going to spend it chasing performative legacy, trying to impress people who won't remember you in 20 years? Or are you going to focus on what actually matters? Integrity, kindness, courage, wisdom, real connection with the people in your life. Here's my challenge for you. Not this week, starting today. Choose one of the 4 Stoic virtues we talked about. Wisdom, justice, courage, or temperance. Just one. And ask yourself, how can I practice this virtue today? Maybe it's having that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's showing kindness to someone who can't do anything for you in return. Maybe it's saying no to something that doesn't serve your values. Just one intentional act of virtue today. If this video gave you clarity, hit that like button right now. It helps more people discover this message when they need it most. And tell me in the comments, which of the 4 virtues resonates most with you right now? Wisdom, justice, courage, or temperance? Just one word. Let's build a community of people who are choosing to live fully, consciously, courageously in the time we have. Subscribe if you want more philosophy that actually helps you live better. And remember what Marcus wrote. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. See you tomorrow.